right, welcome.
Welcome,
podcast number 153.
Churchy tree.
Purple burglar alarm.
You guys can catch us on OnlyFans next week.
Yeah,
Turn up our ratings.
You can see how much he's actually sunning his butthole.
Who? Carlos?
Yes.
Yeah, dude. Have you seen my complexion?
He's been following the Liver King's non-ancestral ways of doing steroids.
They're not steroids unless you get caught.
So, topic of the day is Liver King.
Yes. Yes, that's all we're going to talk about.
What does it look like when you're on steroids? Definitely not what he looked like.
Yeah.
That wasn't so obvious.
Yeah.
Now, topic is what? CrossFit training for sport specific.
Is CrossFit compatible with other sports?
So you have a brain for it?
Compared to CrossFit as a sport by itself?
Yeah, so I had a thought.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a thought yesterday, trying to come up with topics. I had a thought about, I saw like a friend of mine's son on Instagram. He plays basketball. He's like a really, really good basketball player from what I see from all their posts, but any child is good, in their parents' eyes. But I actually think he actually is really good. He's really freaking tall. But I was thinking about it. So both his parents taught CrossFit. They both did it. His dad actually taught basketball to high school, so he was a basketball coach for many years. Anyway, I was thinking about it. I was like, I wonder how many people, because I always feel like I hear that from like Froning and those people. Like if kids do CrossFit, they need to use it to be better at their sport. They don't need to be trying to do it as a sport. That's what Froning's always said. Talk about like the teens and stuff. Like, go out and play sports. That way you can enjoy the team camaraderie and learn different stuff from your
you're getting
team.
Social skills from the whole thing. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago on that when we were talking stuff.
Yeah, so I was wondering like how many people actually use CrossFit to help get better at their sport, and then how many people do it as a sport, and then how many people do it as for like longevity and health, and then like what's the focus of each, you know what I mean? Thinking about it as using it for a sport, like we're talking about before we started recording, is like I was asking, like, would you, like, Carlos, you played basketball, like knowing CrossFit, you've taught it for many years, like going back, would you tell your younger self, like, hey, here's the training stuff that you should be doing that would help? Obviously you need to go practice the sport, but
yeah, I think it's super beneficial just from a power output and learning mechanics that you would learn in CrossFit. The only dangerous side, depending on the gym, and I don't know if you remember CrossFit in the early days, is nothing's lateral.
Yeah,
everything was up and down, which it
still kind of is.
And it's very dangerous if you're not reproducing those similar movements in your training. It doesn't mean it has to be everything. Yeah. But if I'm moving side to side laterally playing basketball, and everything I'm training is
forward and back, up and down.
Yeah. You're gonna run into some issues. But I think overall, Jesus, I didn't have any strength and conditioning as a kid. I don't know about you, Adrian, but I would love to have CrossFit.
When you played sports, sports stuff, I know soccer, but what other, I know you've basically done everything, fencing, name it, that's not an American sport.
Did you guys have Did you have a strength and conditioning coach?
Was that a thing?
Yes and no. I guess it depends on the sport, right?
Horseback riding didn't.
No, but I don't know. I guess growing up, I was always like super active, but like playing sports, not necessarily just doing anything in a gym, which I don't know, for like in most cases, I guess would be fine until you want to reach a certain level. Where
you mean like level of competitiveness?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then with certain sports, then you may need to increase your strength and conditioning, and that's where I think CrossFit could be beneficial.
The reason why I asked about that, about whether you did it over there, is because I think here, and then Carlos, I'm sure you can say yes or no to this, would be depending on the school. Because I've talked to people who, like Britt, for instance, she played basketball and softball in high school, and she went on to play softball in college. Her strength conditioning was none. Like she's like, I never bench pressed, I never pressed, I never squatted, or they might have squatted a little bit, but it was like, I think they squatted. I think their off season was like a couple months, and during that time they did very little strength conditioning, like strength work.
I can vouch for
And
that.
that's what I was gonna say. Like, and I know some schools. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, none. Like I know Britt, you have more experience with that. Like for me, the girls that I trained from high school up into the D2 college soccer, there was no strength and conditioning for female athletes, and it's probably still on the lower end. But even when you get to AAU and traveling sports, it's still a missing component. And that was one of the things I had the luxury of working with an orthopedic surgeon. We talked about the Q angles and ACL tears in most common female soccer players, basketball players, and I learned a lot.
Q angle for you guys is the angle from the hip to the foot, and women have a larger Q angle than men, and that's why there's been studies to back it, and there's been studies to go against it, to say that's why women get more ACL tears in a lot of sports.
So you saw like there's definitely a big discrepancy in strength and conditioning. Like what they'll do is they would just hand you a pamphlet that they did for the guys.
Right.
And it's
I remember talking to someone, I can't remember who, they said that like basically whenever they played basketball or football, I think it might have been basketball. Anyway, basically their coach was, their strength conditioning coach was a bodybuilder, like a legit, like does steroids, does shows. So that's what they did. They did bodybuilding. So they would do like 4 or 5 sets of 10, bench press, curls, tricep extensions, blah. And that was it. So there wasn't anything like specific power output, those kinds of things like you're talking about, like basketball training wise. So that's what I was wondering. That's why I was saying, like, I'm sure it depends school to school, but I wasn't sure how it was in like Europe.
But don't get me wrong, like that's still a good thing, just any type of physical exercise. But like you do need to have, like if we had CrossFit, I'm curious of what some of the athletes out of our high school and
were
even younger, what they would have been able to do. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
We only had like 2 hours of, PE
physical, like
per week. And
is that in sports or that's just in school?
That was in school.
Okay, I think that was the same for us. Maybe
I don't even think we had that. We just played. I think he had time after lunch, and then I don't even think I even entered the weight room in high school until I was officially on a team.
Was this in high school too?
And middle school.
Okay. So I know that we had like a PE in elementary, middle school. I think we had like a couple times. You had to sign up for athletics, and I know I did. Yeah, your microphone stands being all kinds of dumb.
I mean, just think about like our experience, like watching like Adrian move now and the stuff he does and stuff that I can do playing. And as we get older, I could just imagine like what you're able to do from a sports specific, like football, basketball, track, doing that stuff. I can see with just my nieces doing a couple days every now and then, like they got stronger. It's pretty cool. But then it comes down to time. This is the other thing. Yeah. It's like you have school, they have this. Yeah,
there's only so much you can do in the week.
So that's where.
But that's what I was wondering. Difficult. Yeah, so I think like you touched on that really. But so it's like 2 times a week. So the reason why I was thinking about like CrossFit specifically towards the sport that people are doing is, so like take a class like today. What are we doing? We're doing push jerks for skill, more or less. And then like a 24 every 90 second kind of 24 minute every 90 second workout that has like sled, ski erg, push-ups, toes to bar, those kinds of things. Like, would you use a CrossFit class, a general CrossFit class programming and apply that to a kid that's playing, say, basketball, football, baseball? That's just what we did. So I know there's other sports. That's just my fucking small ass school. There's nothing else.
No, I think for those like very popular sports, I think it would never hurt anyone to have a good strength and conditioning base. Yeah. Right. Because I don't think it would ever, limit their ability to still learn the skills and things like that. Actually, I think it'd make it easier, right? To like, for example, baseball, know how to
swing a bat.
If you're a little stronger rather than you feel like a pencil neck.
Right. Yeah. So the reason why I was asking is because like sports have been around for a long time. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like if I remember I was talking to someone about a certain thing of equipment, and they're like, "Oh, it increases this by tenfold and this by that," and I was like, "I'm pretty sure if that were 100% true, all the top people would be doing it." You know what I mean? So it's like you don't hear about how. I mean, maybe it's just because it's not put into play as much, but you don't hear about like, oh, all the NBA now is using CrossFit. You know what I mean? Or the NFL is now using CrossFit. It's like.
That's what there's a big bias still. I mean, in the strength, I mean, even think about, we won't use names, at the Christmas party, strength and conditioning coach, they get frustrated because all their education, everything that they've deemed as this is what you want to do, specifically what they study is like, okay, you're a track star. This is what I'm going to write you a program.
Yeah.
Here comes CrossFit, where it's a very broad, generalized thing and everyone loves it. And they want them to try it, and they're like, "No, it's stupid. Like it's random. Like so, I think it's like a chip on their shoulder a little bit."
Well, and that's the reason why I was saying. So it's like if like let's take that example. Like I'm a track strength conditioning coach, and I have athletes that run the 100, the 400, and I have athletes that run the mile, that run like 5K. You have all these different variations of athletes and stuff like that. Like, do you think that using CrossFit style training, I hate to say it, but is more beneficial than the current way of training for them? Not to say, because it's like, I remember Rebecca was teaching us in that running clinic, and she was trying to help us learn to run, and that helps in CrossFit just because, we run often. Yeah. So it's like little stuff like learning how to stride, learning how to run, like some of the stuff she teaches is very much in the face of pose method, where it's like fall, pick your knees up. I remember I used to run pose pretty well, and I had a guy tell me, he's like, "You're way too long to be running like that." He's like, "You're taking double the amount of steps you need to be." He's like, "Your legs are twice as long as mine, and I'm taking half the steps you are." And he was flying past me, and he was teaching me, because he's like, "This is how we learn to run in track, and this is what they're teaching us." So it's the main question is like, because obviously, not obviously, but what you can do is you can take certain aspects of CrossFit and apply that in. So like, I know I'm kind of all over the place right now, and cut me off.
No, keep going, because I'm gonna add on to you.
Shut up.
No, really, tell me to shut up, because if you don't, I will keep fucking rambling.
No, because I like where you're going with this, because I know what you're going to explain, and I'm going to add on.
I dropped into, as a guy that used to come to our gym back in Oklahoma, and he would do lifting stuff, and I teach him, like, he would do some cleans, and he was like, "Hey man, can you watch my form a little bit?" He was just like super fast talker, and I remember I went over there and I like fixed him, and he like smoked himself in the chin, and I was like, "Yeah, that's because now you did things correctly." But I was like, "Hey, you're the college football strength conditioning coach. Can I please come in and just be a fly on the wall and watch you teach?" Because I was just curious to see what they do. And they were doing like shrugs. They were doing a whole bunch of stuff. And I remember I was fixing for him, and the people kept asking me questions, because he was like, "Hey, he's a coach. But he's just here to watch," or whatever. And then people were like, "Oh, okay, cool." They were taking everything I was saying. They were listening, they were fixing stuff, fixing form, and doing different stuff. And then at the end of it, he was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, he's a CrossFit coach." And they were like, "Oh," like throughout the entire time, they were listening to me as if I knew.
Cheater.
Yeah. No, but it was just kind of like, "Oh, you do CrossFit." Like, you know what I mean? Because they were trying to do bar muscle ups, just they were messing around at the end. And I was like, "This is how you do it." And I did like 4 or 5 of them, and they were like, "Oh, man." And I was like, "Yeah, I do CrossFit." And they were like, "Oh." It's that
paradigm. Like
but me saying that's not the conversation I want. It's the other side. It's the stuff that they were doing. You could say that's CrossFit, because we're doing power cleans, we're doing shrug, we're doing clean pulls, you could say that's CrossFit, but it's not. It's powerlifting and some Olympic weightlifting. Yeah. It's very power strength driven.
Yeah, that's the point I wanted to make, actually. Going back to your, NBA players, or just like elite athletes doing, CrossFit, like you never hear that everybody's doing CrossFit or anything like that. I think we tend to forget that CrossFit also didn't reinvent anything.
Right.
CrossFit is just strength and conditioning put in a certain format, and all elite athletes, or the vast majority of them, do strength and conditioning as part of their sport, and it may be close or not close to CrossFit, but really at the end of the day, it's kind of all the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, like, CrossFit is strength and conditioning that is timed and typically in a group environment. Right. And constantly varied and blah 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 blah.
It's just measurable, right? Like you can
it remains just strength and conditioning. So I guess indirectly, you could say that any athlete that does strength and conditioning
does CrossFit.
I mean, to some extent. Because
here's how I look at CrossFit programming per se. Like if you were to, if someone from say the U or any college were to come up to me and be like, hey, I want you to be our strength and conditioning coach for our football team. I need to do some research on players. I need on not specifically. I mean like positions on what they do. Blah 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 blah.
And you can look at what they've done previously too, and you can be like, okay,
yeah, exactly, yeah, and build on that. No, you're exactly right, and build on what they've already kind of set in stone of normal practice. But so like whenever I think of CrossFit programming, I think of like the AMRAPs, the EMOMs, the obviously for times, but it's like 3 rounds for time. That's like a 9-minute workout, 10-minute workout, like a general class for us. And I know that not everybody believes in the same way of programming that I do, because I very much don't program how you're taught at CrossFit. In a way of, I do what most gyms do, strength biased with a Metcon at the end. But is that style of training. So like, let's take, and I'm not looking for anything specific, but like, let's take a football team to where it's like, all right, I have, 60 to 80 athletes coming in. All right. So today we're going to be doing power cleans, followed by clean pulls, followed by blah. And then we're going to do a Metcon at the end. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
is that a,
So in most cases, I would say no, at least for a lot of sports. Going back to your example of a football team, like,
American football, by the way, for anybody else. Go ahead.
Soccer.
What other football is there?
Yeah, none.
It's football.
You mean the stupid football? Anyway.
But so at the end of the day, the purpose of CrossFit, if you, for example, look at elite athletes, CrossFit Games, and so on, is the goal is to be pretty much like average to good at everything, right? There's no specialty, no specialization. But in a sport like football, for example, there is some degree of specialization, right? So even though I know nothing about football, like zero, I know that there are different positions. And, the guy who's going to need to block and who weighs, a lot of things is going to need to be super strong, but he doesn't need to be able to run a mile in, sub 5 minute. Right. But the guys on the sides may need to be,
be
faster and maybe able to run and like jump and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like I could do a little bit of research, and I know a lot more than I come across about football, but yeah.
But that being said, you could do, I'm guessing, obviously, like divide the team in like
per positions.
Yes, per position, and like kind of like introduce a bias in like have different programs for each group, and introduce like either a strength bias or a power bias or whatever, speed bias, whatever bias you want.
Yeah, because I remember in high school I did 2-a-days once, which if you don't know what that means is like it's the beginning of football season. Basically, it's like, all right, summer's over, fall's here. Like we need to start getting ready. It's 2-a-days. It's a week. At least ours was. You come in the morning, you do all this training, you leave for lunch, you come back and do all this training, and you do that for a week straight. And it's kind of like hell week. Like they just kind of throw you in. And me and all of our friends, they're like, you want to play football this year? I was like, not really. And they're like, let's do it. And I was like, all right. And I was the only one of all of my friends that actually did the whole week. 2 of my friends never showed up. One of them showed up the first day, and then I was the only one to finish out the whole week. It's because like once I start something,
you want to play football? Not really. All right, let's go. It's this way.
Yeah. See you later. Have fun.
They started off as us at 6 a.m. to learn lifting, and then it led up to the 2 days. And I was like, "Fuck that."
Yeah, that sucks. But I told the coach at the very end. I remember I got hit by he was our lead quarterback. Like he was just the stud of the team, and we do these hitting drills where you just stand like me to you. You're just going to take it. I'm going to hit you as hard as I can. We're both going to stand up. You're going to hit me. It's just a practice and feeling
form tackling.
And and after that, I was like, I'm done. I don't want this anymore. That hurt. And he told me, he's like, that was the hardest thing you won't ever do anything that hard again in any of the rest of the football season. He was trying to convince me not to quit. And I was like, nah, I'm going back to band. We don't hit each other there, at least not like that. But what I realized through that was like the receiver is and this isn't every football program. I mean, obviously there's better ones. People go play in the NFL. So like that was a very general thing. Everybody did the same thing. Like nobody broke off in specific groups and stuff like that. But when I did drop in with my buddy and watched him, he had, I think, the linemen and a few other specific ones that were about the same group. Like he didn't have the wide receivers and the running backs. He didn't have anybody that runs super fast or do anything to try to catch whatever. That was a different group. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah, you don't want your quarterback doing what your front line's doing.
Yeah, because it makes no sense. Like the kickers are always they don't ever do anything.
So like what I would do is, so my soccer kids and anyone that was, I think I had one D1 prospect, took the average time frame of his position, which was like 26 seconds, and then we adapted his strength to that. Okay. So we would do banded back squats. I would roll in the soccer ball. He had 14 seconds to try to score on me. Like, so we try to mimic his,
so like fatigue him really hard and then try to do different stuff.
He's doing a sprint, and this was what Louis Simmons kind of specified towards what, like with his books and stuff, was like, you can't take a quarterback and have him do the same workout as your running back. They're doing two different things, two different positions. So take your program and adapt it to how.
So let's say I'm a high school or middle school student, and my strength conditioning kind of sucks, or I just feel like man, I need to get more. Like I want to be better. I want to be stronger, blah, 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 blah. There's a local gym near me. Do I go join that CrossFit gym? And then, do you know what I mean? Do you feel like that would, I feel like that would help a lot, because if I can teach you form, I can teach you how to do stuff correctly, you're going to get fitter. You know what I mean? The goal, like you said, is to be good at everything. And then you do the sport specific stuff on top of that to be really good at that sport. Mm-hmm. So like as a student, is it good for them to come in and just take a CrossFit class?
100%. I mean, and here's like everything like we talked about, is CrossFit dangerous? Do your diligence and find a place that fits you, because if you find a place that cares about your clients like we do and wants to put the effort and see people succeed, then that's a good place for you to be. If it's somewhere where someone, all they care about is what you look like or what you're putting out on the field, that could get dangerous where you're going to get injured.
Right. So, I remember the same guy that I talked about that was the strength conditioning coach I sat in with. I remember I was talking to him about, we were kind of bullshitting before the class started or before his session started. And he was like, oh, if you look, he's like, that guy, he's from California. He did CrossFit there. That guy, he's done CrossFit. That guy done CrossFit. He's like, watch their form. He's like, I love it. He goes, most strength conditioning coaches be like, oh, you're a CrossFitter. He goes, I love it whenever someone who's like, oh, I've done CrossFit for X amount of years. They're like, sweet, I don't have to work on technique or form with you because yours is impeccable. Now we're just going to focus on strength and weight.
No, dude, it's like even when people come in.
What are you laughing about, nerd?
I was supposed to say, I'm pretty sure I can think of
air squats.
A couple of people who've been doing CrossFit for years and who still move like shit.
So something to remember: this guy wanted to play at a D1 school. That's a different mentality than someone who just comes in and moves on occasion, who has no body awareness. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like someone who's a top athlete versus someone like me that's just a jackass that does the splits when he does power cleans. So it's like,
no, I didn't mean you.
No, I know you weren't referring to me. I was just trying to make a joke. But
like, isn't that?
But I know what you mean. Yeah, there are people that move like shit in CrossFit gyms. But what I'm saying is like someone who gives a shit about their performance and is using this to build that, they're going to focus very hard on.
But isn't that funny how they're like, oh, that person does cross, and then there's like this sour from the second condition.
He had no sourness.
Not him, but like the majority. Like when someone comes in here and they're like, oh, I want to coach here. Like I only have my NSCA. I only have my CSCA.
Yeah.
I don't go.
I forgot about CSCA.
God, that's such a terrible certificate.
Yeah.
Like, cool. Like, you'd be a good fit here. You still need to get your L1 like you want to personally.
Right.
Like, I think the best trainers like yourself, me and others, Britt, like you have an open mind versus saying CrossFit is the best programming, only programming. It's kind of ridiculous to just say that. Like you can't. Like you have to be open to like, hey, powerlifters have something about their power up. Maybe I should try sumo deadlifts because I'm always hurting my back with conventional deadlifts. Like there's not one all be all.
Yeah, I think with that, I don't think that's everywhere. But I know what you mean. I think the people that tend to excel the most, and I'm not even talking about myself, just are the people that are open to other ideas and other ways of teaching and doing things. Like whenever I have someone who comes in, they're like Eddie that used to come here. He played in the NFL. He played for the Bears.
Him.
Like
easy to coach.
So easy to coach. He would take it. He would just be like, yeah, whatever, man, fix me, fix me, because he understands that the coach is there to improve you so that you can improve, so you can be better on the field. So I think that there's a bit of a disconnect with most people that don't really take coaching well. With if they just do CrossFit or just do cycling or just do whatever, and they don't take coaching very well. I think it has to do with, oh no, I know what I'm doing. It's like, no, at the end of the day, we're just trying to fix you to help you become a better you. But like what I would say with him is like, it was a little intimidating to have him in class for me. I get intimidated. Like,
I had no idea, so I wasn't intimidated until afterwards. He's like, yeah,
that's what I mean.
NFL. I was like,
afterwards, yes.
I was like,
I hope I didn't sound like an idiot.
Shit, I hope he follows my instructions. I'm like, do you know how to use a weight belt?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of a weight belt? So there was a guy that dropped in a couple days ago. Super nice guy. He owns a barbell company now, but he used to own CrossFit Timberwolf, I think it was. Anyway, it was like a Minnesota kind of area. Britt coming to me, she's like, hey, we help coach because I'm a little intimidated. And I feel the exact same way every time someone's like, oh, I'm a affiliate owner or I'm a coach of, whatever. I always feel really intimidated because I just don't want to sound like I'm some idiot that doesn't know what I'm talking about. And the reason why I say that is because I'm constantly trying to learn and want to be better. And if I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I don't mean this in like I always have to be the smartest person, but if someone knows more than me and I'm trying to teach them, I don't want to teach them wrong. I want to teach them correctly. And if they know a better way and they're taking my class and they're like, oh, this guy, he tries, it's like, man, like help me be a better person. But obviously they're just here to drop in. They're not here to teach me anything.
Oh no, they're judging us the whole time.
Probably. I mean, every time we drop into the gym, I judge people, but no, I get it. But yeah, does that? I feel like that we kind of touched on it really well on that. So I feel like there needs to be a reminder and a divide, maybe, on doing CrossFit for another sport, or doing CrossFit for the sport of CrossFit, or doing CrossFit for the sake of health and longevity. I feel like those are very much three different buckets that you can be in. And that's the reason why I asked, like, should a high school, middle school student that wants to play a sport, should they drop into a gym that does GPP programming? So like I feel like our gym, I feel like I do GPP programming with a little bit of emphasis on the competitive side.
Yeah, we're biased a little bit, but that's good. It holds everyone else more accountable.
Right. And I like it.
A bias on what?
Being more competitive. So
like our volume and stuff. Like some places, when you go to them, like would never do some of the stuff we do. Like some of our clients go away to like other gyms and they're like, dude, I did every workout RX. I normally scale every workout at our gym.
Yep. I get that 24/7. People tell us that all the time. They tell Carlos that, they tell me that. They're like, I went back to my old gym and I smashed everybody and did everything RX. They're like, normally I'm near the bottom of the list here. And that can be the caliber of people that are the client that go to your gym. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think you have to do a good job of scaling things. We have a good variety of clients, and it goes from anywhere from 15 years old to 73, 74 now.
Yeah, something like that.
And like it's like what we talked about the previous, I don't know, it was 2 episodes ago, about intensity, like relative intensity, right? Like you can still do our programming. It's based on where you're at in your fitness journey.
Because And this is to kind of answer your question a little bit further, Adrian, on what I mean by with the emphasis a little bit more on the competitive side of things. Is like some gyms I know. So like one time I walked into a gym. I dropped into a gym with Tommy one morning. It was a friend of his, and it was I think we went to the 5:30 a.m. class, and it was me, Tommy, and another member, one of their members. We were just drop-ins. The first thing we did was take 10 minutes to work on double unders, the whole class. Then the actual workout was a 20-minute alternating EMOM. The first minute was 1 to 3 snatch balances. You choose the weight, moderate weight. And then the next minute was a hard number of wall balls. 20 minutes. I was like, oh God, That sounds brutal. First 10 minutes to work on double unders. So what me and Tommy did, I was like, dude, what are you going to do for this part? Because like, we're not going to change anything. We're going to do what they tell us. So we did 10 up to 50 down to 10 double unders with like rest as much as we wanted. Just
flight simulator.
Yeah, exactly. But we just did 10. We're just kind of like, oh yeah, what do you got going on today? Let's go. Okay, 20. So we just worked for the whole 20 minutes or 10 minutes. I have no idea how many double unders I did. But the next one was we did 3 snatch balances at 135, and we were sharing, so we were alternating. And he was like, how many wall balls? I said, how many wall balls are you going to try to do? And he was like, well, what do you want? I was thinking 20. And he goes, I'm going to try to do 30 because you can do 30 in a minute. And I was like, bro, that's 300 wall balls on top of 30 snatch balances at 135. I was like, I'm going to die. And he goes, well, it's Tommy.
Suck it up.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, all right, I'll try. So I made it the first 3 rounds doing 30, and he got to the point where he was literally shoving me out of the way because I was ending my 30th wall ball like right on time for him to get started. So he just like moved, grabbed the ball, and then I dropped to 25, and then I think I did between 20 and 25 for the remainder of the time. Anyway, the whole point of that, bringing up that style, that class, was because like I would never program 10 minutes to work on dubs because there's nothing countable in that. Well, how many dubs did you get in 10 minutes? For someone like us who can do dubs pretty well, double unders, that's a lot. Like you can get 100 in less than a minute. So you're looking at over, like, if you can just keep that pace, over 1,000 double unders in 10 minutes. See you later, Cavs.
Well, I think I'm also like that 10 minutes. I'd rather just say take 5 minutes out of a class, people that need to work on it, because
right.
It's not as bad. And
but as a new gym that you have 3 people out of say 80 who can do double unders, that makes sense, right? So what I was going to say was what I would program for that was I would do a Tabata, maybe like maybe even a 10-minute Tabata or something, or 5 minutes, or alternating between double unders. So Tabata, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Do that 2 times and then do something else.
I got it.
Because now you can count your reps. How many double unders did you get in that 20 seconds? Yeah. So now we can actually make it a little more competitive. On the hard number of wall balls, you could do easy, medium, hard. You could say easy is 10 to 15, medium is 15 to 20, 25, and then hard is 25 to 30 or something like that. You know what I mean? Because now you have a more specific parameter to keep count. Okay, in that EMOM, how many wall balls did you get total? Well, I did the medium number, so I did 20. Yeah. So at the end of it, I did 200 wall balls. And it's like, okay, cool, there's your score. Whereas like they didn't have any of that. They didn't care. So that's what I mean by have more of like a competitive emphasis. I don't necessarily mean like what Carlos brought up was like we do muscle ups. I do everything. Like we do handstand walks. We do squat snatches in a workout. We do ring muscle ups. Like I program everything. I don't want, if it's in the hopper of CrossFit, if we had a freaking swimming pool, I'd program that, but we don't. Yeah. But that's what I mean as more of a competitive emphasis in time and numbers. And the reason why I want that is not because you can be first or last on a leaderboard. It's because it's countable. It's what CrossFit is. It's repeatable, measurable. Mm-hmm. Like how many did you get? We're going to repeat this in 6 weeks. Did you do better? Yes or no? And I feel like for some gyms, they kind of take a step away from that. But kind of all that being said is as a sport, I feel like you need that.
Oh, like you're talking about like if I'm doing CrossFit as my sport.
Yeah, you need the measurable. Yeah. You need the you're going to do X amount of reps.
You might as well start looking at having a gymnastics coach, an Olympic coach, and a mind coach.
If we're talking about full sport, yes, I agree.
Like a lot of people are capable of doing it, but you want to, once you start getting to that where you want it to be competitive, like some of our clients, like that's the next phase is like, okay, you've gotten really good in the gym and you've mastered a good overall snapshot of all the movements and you do them efficiently. Even some of the more advanced ones is then looking at strength biased and then looking at a time period of how you're going to train going into each season of the CrossFit Games. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then I feel like that's a little out of my element. But do you understand what I mean by the competitive programming? Mm-hmm. Do you think – so here's another question. Do you think and be honest. You can say no, yes. Do you think that doing the programming how I do it is good for people in just that are showing up for health and longevity? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
The reason why I ask that is because it's like, as someone who just wants to move every day, like I just want to go and get sweaty and move. Like I don't need to have the floor measured out. I don't need to have this to there. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's really good. Can it improve? Hell yeah, we can all improve on everything. One thing I would love to improve on will be getting our clients to come to the workouts that aren't sexy.
Yeah.
You know, the one and like emphasize that like, hey, those, I do like the fact that you did put the cardio piece, the third piece of our workouts on the regular leaderboard for people that can choose like, oh, I don't want to lift today. I just want to do, like I've seen Jill come in a bunch of times and I think that's awesome. Like you're still keeping your routine like we talked about last week, like with discipline, like, so those are good things as well. I don't, like I told you before, like I went, 6 months to 8 months with no barbell, like Olympic lifting. I didn't see any big difference and came back with you on programming back in 2019. And I mean, other than my injuries out in the mountains, I'm healthy as hell. I don't have a problem getting up in the morning. And
I don't know about you, Carlos, but whenever I have personal training clients, I don't know why. It's one of my favorite movements, like legitimately, but I always steer clear of snatches.
Yeah.
I have no idea why. Like I never can remember them. I always forget them. So do you think doing snatches, and I think yes, because I program them in class, but I think that for the general population, snatching, unless you just enjoy it, is to me is not a super important thing to do. So like I almost never program that unless it's like something that people just like to do.
No, yeah, I mean it is one of the like I tell people, I'm like, this is one of the most high skilled movements that people spend their whole lives doing.
Yeah, and I don't not program it because it's high skill, but I just for whatever reason just don't. What do you think, Adrian?
Yeah, I think you can be strong and conditioned without snatching.
Yeah.
It is obviously a very complex movement, and it takes, like, some people will learn it very quickly. Some people will take forever to learn it. And I think it depends on the person's goals, right? I think there's nothing wrong if someone says, I just want to be fit, but I don't want to snatch.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, I've had clients come in and tell me they're like, I just don't want to snatch. I'm like, cool, do cleans.
Yeah.
Isn't it cool? It's weird though, like, because I'm one of the people that was like, snatches don't need to be taught to people with a barbell. But after the past 2 years, I kind of have a different viewpoint. I even was against it for baseball players because of rotator cuff issues. And I started thinking about like the pull-up. The pull-up, I feel like
the kipping pull-up or strict?
Either. Like just getting into that, like that's a huge movement and a very like fundamental one that you want to learn, but people just want to skip over and jump into a band and move and move and move. And not here, not in Utah since I've lived here, but when I first started CrossFit, I can attest to about 85% of like shoulder issues were from pull-ups, like excessive pull-ups, excessive pulling. And never once was I thinking about snatching, like that being the issue. I think it's because as I got with heavier weight. So there's always biased movements. Like, would it be stupid for me on that viewpoint to like say I'm never going to teach anyone kipping pull-ups because they're going to hurt their shoulders? That's idiotic. So it's like he said, like it takes each individual person, their individual goals, and just guiding people like, hey, you can snatch if you want. Like some people are like, I want to get good at like overhead. I'm like, if you're not ready for it, don't worry about it. But I think the guidance and communication is really important to where we go with movements. I don't think there should be anything that you shouldn't do. Like some people I saw this one thing where it was like NFL players, NBA players, and their strength and conditioning coaches don't have anyone deadlift. Deadlift is like out of their strength and conditioning program. They just do cleans.
It's just because of like the
power output or the potential for injury. And I don't know what truth there is to that. Like I'm not going to sit here and say we shouldn't deadlift.
I do know that most, if not all, I won't say all because there's obviously outliers, but most Olympic weightlifters don't deadlift. And I remember my old boss, who is an Olympic weightlifter, would always tell me, he's like, you can deadlift to get better at deadlifting. You can't deadlift to get better at cleans. You can do cleans and get better at deadlifting. And the reason why is because of the speed and the power.
Yeah.
So to get a bar up to your shoulders, you have to have explosive speed to get the bar off the ground. In a deadlift, it's more of a, I mean, yeah, you can say you need to be explosive and all that stuff, but it's,
you have an end range.
Yeah, if you pick your 1 rep max, you're not explosively lifting that off the bar.
Yeah.
Some people do, but it's very rare. So I can see that the reason why, but I just feel like it's just another tool in the toolbox that you can add to that to get better and stronger in those positions.
But yeah, but how, like, dude, that's got to be so uplifting for like clients that have never deadlifted and all of a sudden they can deadlift 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And they only weigh like 110. Like,
I think for general, like we talked about earlier, now if you're playing, say, football or basketball, and it's all about being explosive, jumping, running, being fast off the line, those kinds of things. Like, I think very, like Adrian was talking about earlier, like you tailor that. So it's like, yeah, let's take out deadlifts because there is, if I have 2 pulling movements, which is deadlifts and cleans, and I'm trying to get 1 in this session this week, you're going to see more benefit in the power cleans than you would the deadlifts in your specific movement. But if I'm taking Bill over here, who's just a 48-year-old, just general fitness person, and I teach you how to brace and pick up something off the ground, whenever you go to your friends who needs help moving a deck or something like that, and they pick up a piece of wood that's like, 800 pounds with your friend, and you're both trying to pick it up, you know how to brace and pick up correctly. I feel like that has more application than never teaching them how to deadlift, because obviously they're not trying to clean that weight up. And it's, to me, a clean setup versus a deadlift setup is different. But I don't know. That could be somebody like might think differently.
No, I think you're right.
Thanks, pal.
well, like the other thing too is like what you're talking about is like imagine you have the 300-pound front lineman that's coming to the gym. Are you going to teach him how to brace, or are we going to have him do some heavy sled pushes that's going to mimic what
right.
he's working on? So stuff like that. And like even just overall, I think CrossFit for young kids as a strength program is beneficial. It's not end all be all. That's where you can talk to the facility and see if there's other things additionally that they can do to improve.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is reducing the potential for injury.
Yeah.
Right. Like giving them more muscle mass, bone density, so that they aren't getting injured.
Here's a question for you. Kind of a statement question. I don't know. Depends on how it comes out. So you have someone that's here for longevity and someone that's here for sport. And I know the answer to this, but I just kind of want you guys to elaborate on it. Focus on technique and form. And I hate it when people say, just working on form today. But getting down the basics and those kinds of things. So what I mean is, if I'm here for longevity and stuff like that, and let's say that we're doing power cleans and I tend to catch out super wide with my feet, kind of starfish landing. And coach comes over and is like, hey, try not to do that. You need to land closer. But let's say that I'm a different person and I'm training for the sport. I'm trying to go. Obviously, good feet position in a power clean is going to trump bad feet position at the end range, because now your ceiling is a lot lower because now your form's garbage. So at what point do you allow that in a sport? At what point do you allow that in a everyday? Do you know what I'm saying? So like kipping pull-ups, let's say that you're just kind of off on it and whatever, say we're doing sets of 10. You never really do over 5 to 10 as a person that's just here for health. But as a competitor, there's potential you might have to do 50 to 100 in one set. In a competitor, having perfect form, because that will help. So like in a butterfly pull-up, if you have good positions throughout the entire pull-up on multiple reps, you're going to be able to last longer on doing longer sets. If you're someone that's just trying to, like, should they learn butterfly pull-ups first off? And then also, like, if their positions are a little bit off, but they never do over 5 to 10 at a time ever, like, I know the answer is always focus on technique and stuff, but at what point do you just kind of like allow as a competitor? Does that make sense? Go ahead, Adrian. You're going to say Adrian.
You mean at what point do you allow not perfect technique?
Yes.
I mean,
I know that sounds like a dumb fucking thing, but like when you have someone who does deadlifts and they slightly round their lower back, but they're trying to compete and go for a 1 rep max versus someone who's not.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, if you're in the middle of competition and there is something on the line, whether it's like, I don't know, money or whatever, then I mean, yeah, you can
let it go.
Blow that biscuit out your butt.
If it's gonna allow you to get an advantage, then maybe you can consider letting the technique go to try and go a little faster. But I mean, if not, if it's just, and I know it's very easy to say, but I would say we're all guilty of that, because even, something as simple as a win in the gym or in your class or whatever, or winning over your pal or, whatever, or your enemy at the gym feels good, right? And people want to feel good, right? When they come to the gym, they don't necessarily want to be like, hey, I'm just going to be last all the time and I love it. But I mean, ideally,
because the reason why I say that and then finish your sentence is because like sometimes whenever people will lift and they're like, oh, but my form's not good, I'm going to go way down. And it's like, well, there's a certain point. There's a tipping point. You need to have some weight to give you some feedback to let you know you're doing it wrong. But also you don't want to go so heavy that the feedback is so negative. Yeah. But also you don't want to stay so light that you're not getting any feedback. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
And there's a gender specific on that. Like
maybe not.
I won't get into that, but I'm going to say like most guys go too heavy.
Yeah.
And most women will go too light. Some women are scared to go heavier because they don't want to get bulky. They don't want to get hurt. So these are things to like kind of educate.
Have you seen that meme where it talks about that? It's like, it shows like this really skinny, scrawny looking guy that's like been hitting it hard for like 10 years straight, getting all the things right, eating 100%
paleo,
still skinny as crap. And then the girl walks in and accidentally gets too jacked. I was like, yeah, it's exactly right.
So like, anyway, that's what I was mean by bias and gender.
I gotcha.
And
I think that has to do with like as a guy is like, oh, but I have met women in the past that are like, oh, I have to push the weights. But yes, I will agree with you. But you see what I'm saying? There's like a line where it's like you can kind of let stuff kind of bleed through, but also you need to pull it back to make sure that we're still holding it in. Because as someone is longevity, so let's say that I was listening to a podcast the other day, and there was this guy. It was on Mark Bell's podcast, and there was a guy. He's like, He's like, come see me and I'll help make you weaker. Over the course of, I think, 2 years or 3 years, he made all of his lifts in half. He's like, I used to be able to back squat 200 kilos for reps. He's like, now I can barely even squat 100 kilos.
So he stopped doing Bulgarian vitamins.
Yeah, no, what it was he got so obsessive about his form and technique. He was like, I was thinking about, like the 3 points of contact in your feet is the, ball of your foot, the heel, and then where the ball of your pinky. He was like, I was so focused on that, making sure all three. And he's like, and then I'd record my bar path and my squat. And if it deviated a little bit, I would go down weight. And he's like, I just was so obsessed on form being perfect. He goes, I literally dropped all of my weight to focus on that, and I dropped all of my strength. So he was like, if you want to come see me, I can teach you how to get weaker. But he was just creating a joke about it. But he was like, I had to stop focusing on that so much because at the end of the day, he's like, even if you look at the top lifters in the world, their form isn't perfect. No. And he was like, oh, they could be even stronger. And he's like, no. That's not how the world works. That's not how shit works. So he was like, even though my bar would deviate a little forward, a little back, he's like, that's how I move. That's my pattern.
Yeah, I think he's got other issues than the obsession. I think
he's got OCD a little bit about it. But what I'm saying is some people are that way. They're just like, oh, that wasn't right. I should pull the weight back. And I always tell people like, look, I've been working on this for 10 plus years and I'm still working on my form. And
I love when people do that to allow us to encourage them to go a little heavier. What I hate doing is trying to convince someone like, hey, from my experience, my personal experience of like star fishing, and I get frustrated when I do it, is I almost blew my knee out. And then I watched, what's her name, do it in the games. Miranda Olgeride, when she caught her.
Oldroyd?
What? Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh.
When she blew out her, she blew out her ACL right there caught it the wrong way, her knee caved in, snap. So like, and that's one of the
don't do it.
Exactly. But
What?
this
Don't
is
blow your ACL out.
Yeah, don't starfish.
But this is where like I say like your answer is like technique. I'm always going to focus on technique. If you deviate from it a little bit, great. Like that's not the end of the world. But like if you look like you're almost going to break your back,
or something's like crazy.
Like,
but that's why I say that's why I brought up that guy with his self focus on technique and form that. And then that's where I get onto you sometimes where I'm like, Carlos, stop overthinking it.
I do it for myself.
And that's what he said. He goes, I was just overthinking it. So he's like, I had to pull back on overthinking it. So, and that wasn't like a direct at you, but it was just kind of like, that's what I see a lot of people. So like, I remember I was listening to somebody once, they're talking about starfishing. And the guy was like, if you're really, really pushing the load, your body's going to go to that.
Yeah.
Now, you have to try to fight that as much as possible. That's like Adrian, whenever I see you go for a 1 rep max power clean, your feet never deviate. You always land in the same spot, which is,
But you can do what I'll do is like have someone not move their feet at all. I'm going to a squat stance to start the clean and finish the clean. It's called a catapult.
Yeah. Oh,
to learn
I've
to
never
drop.
heard it called that.
So you go up and down quickly. You don't move your feet, so you learn to drop under the bar.
Yeah.
Like when
always
he
call
says,
it no feet clean.
I would do that too. I think John North called it a catapult or whatever the hell it is. But like, yeah, there's different styles that teach people.
Right. And that's not
And like the end of the day, like if you always focus on technique, I think there should be a day that you focus on getting a little heavier and getting that weight.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at was like if form and technique is only the goal, then you're never going to see the benefits of pushing the weight. And I don't mean pushing yourself to where you're now breaking your back. I mean, if let's say I'm back squatting 225 and I'm warming up and you come over and you're like, hey, you shifted your toes on one of those. Let's drop the weight back. Just use an example. I'm not saying I've never seen you do this, but I'm just using.
I have.
It's like you shifted your toes. Let's pull it back. And it's like, instead of being like, hey, you shifted your toes on rep 3 of 5. Did you realize that? And be like, oh shit, I didn't even realize that. Okay, cool. Let's try it again. And if you did it again and did it again and did it again, cool. Then let's pull the weight back to try to pull it right. But if it's an immediate, the moment you mess up, scale the weight back, pull it back. You need it's too heavy. It's too heavy for you. And it's like, well, maybe I just had a brain fart, or maybe I just stopped thinking about it, or maybe the weight is now heavy enough that I didn't realize I was shifting to my toes in the first part of the pull. That way, whenever I actually caught the clean, I was in my toes because it's only been so light that I've been able to muscle through that position. But now it's heavy enough that it's forcing me out of my position. Hey, keep the weight on the bar, but this is what I want you to focus on: driving through your heels on the pull. You know what I mean? So it's like
getting people to be more body aware and understand. I mean, here's a cool part. You guys are all doing tempo squats the past couple of weeks, and there's a really easy way of figuring out whether you're on the balls of your feet, you're on your heels.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's helped me.
I think they're not progress and technique intersect at some point, and some point will deviate drastically, and you'll see the difference. But if you as an individual and then programmers can kind of keep those kind of almost on a parallel, I think only good things can happen. I mean, dude, there's things I'm PRing still, and there's stuff that I'm way off track from what I used to be able to do. But like you said, everyone's goals are different, and if you're always scaling things, like go up, challenge yourself.
Try. Right. Just because you can do single unders way faster than you can do practicing double unders.
Like 10 double unders, and if you fuck up 10 times,
it's okay.
That's what you get. Like, fight through it.
That's okay. But I think using CrossFit for sport. Sorry, I worded that wrong. Using CrossFit for a sport, as in like you're training, using CrossFit as your strength conditioning for a different sport than CrossFit, I think is very beneficial as long as you're doing your sport specific stuff. Is that kind of like what you guys think?
Yeah, and then as you go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I insist.
No, go. I did this enough today.
So age before beauty.
Fucker. I knew he was gonna pull some shit with me. Hair before
so
baldness.
I was thinking while you guys were talking.
Sounds about right.
There are actually a lot of sports to which CrossFit would not apply, like running, like ballet dancing, archery, things like that. right? I know that when we say sport, but like specifically running, because that's something that was mentioned to us, right? Should you do CrossFit if your like sport is running? Well, probably not.
Well, what if you're a sprinter? Would you not? Would you?
Okay, well, that's different.
Right. Okay, so like I got
so specific. So let's touch on like long distance. Do you think doing CrossFit is beneficial for someone who's doing long distance? Yes or no? And I know there's differences. So I have my answer. You go ahead.
Because I don't deal with long distance runners. Like most of mine have been sprinters and stuff like that. So I don't have enough background.
I think yes. I think doing CrossFit and it will help benefit long distance runners.
Elaborate, please.
I will. Always do.
Stamina, muscle mass.
In order to be a good long distance runner, you have to put in the miles. You have to condition your knees, your hips, your ankles. You have to put in the miles. You can't not run long distance. Mm-hmm. And you can do solely CrossFit and go run a marathon. That marathon's going to suck really bad, a lot worse than if you were to train for it. The reason why I say that I think you can do CrossFit in order to get better at running is you're not doing CrossFit 6 days a week to get better at long distance running. I think incorporating it a couple times a week is very beneficial because you need the strength training that you would get from CrossFit, because like hamstrings, quads, glutes, calves, all those things need to be trained while running. Because if you take like a very, very thin, frail person and tell them to go run, the potential of injury is going to go through the roof. Or if you were to take a strong athlete who is still thin, tell them to go run, they're probably going to do a lot better because they built the bone density and they built the stuff. The strength training is going to be a lot different. Instead of finding a 1 rep max, 3 rep max, 5 rep max in that long distance runner, now we're going to work on 10, 15, 20, I would say. That's just a arbitrary whatever, because the goal is for endurance and the goal is for strength endurance, not just endurance. I think doing short metcons also can help too, because it helps your body get into the other energy systems a lot quicker than if you were to only train one energy system. Now, I'm not saying take away from anything else. So like I did a marathon training regiment probably like 4 years ago, and I did CrossFit. So 3 to 4 days a week, I would just go run long. I'd go run 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the whatever. I would do sprints. Sometimes I would do like run 30 seconds, as hard as you can, walk 30 seconds. And I would do that for multiple times to get better at speed. That way I can get faster and get my feet faster whenever I'm actually running. Then on the days that I wasn't doing the long distance running stuff, I would start my day off or start my session off with a mile run, and I would end my session with another mile run. So I'm still running, but the bulk of the session was strength training, hamstrings, glutes, calves, quads, core. That way none of that breaks down, upper back, because a lot of like runners and stuff, their core tends to break down because staying upright and holding for that long while under duress is very difficult. So you need to build strength in those areas to be able to go and do that. Using CrossFit solely as your only style of training for long distance running, no, I agree. That is not a good way to do it. But I think sprinkling it in can help.
Of course. You're just building muscle mass too.
Tell me I'm wrong. I really want to know.
Yeah. I don't know that I would agree with that.
Yeah, you don't have to. Just tell me.
I guess it depends on, again, I don't know, like what level you do that at, but I think to be like a really good runner, you want very little muscle mass.
Yes. And go ahead.
Yeah. And especially if you want like to be a marathon runner, I don't know that you would need to change from, aerobic to anaerobic system and things like that. I think for long distance running, it's fairly specialized. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. And if you do want to be able to, like, I don't know, I remember when I used to bike a lot, we did a lot of specific training, but it was most of the time, like the vast majority of the time, on our bike. Mm-hmm. So,
and I think that's how running long distance would be too.
So there would be days where we'd be doing long distance. There'd be days where we'd just be doing like interval, and there'd be days would be just flat. There'd be days would be going up the mountains. But looking back, I really don't think that. I mean, the only thing I potentially would have added to that would have maybe like some lower body exercises. But I don't know that CrossFit per se, the way we all practice it and the way, like we look at CrossFit in general without being specialized, because at the end of the day, that's what CrossFit is. It's not specialized at all.
Right.
And if we go with that definition, looking back, I don't think CrossFit would have helped me with becoming a better cyclist.
Yeah. Because so let's take you for example. Whenever you're a cyclist, you probably weighed what, 130, 140?
Tops, yeah.
Yeah, tops.
Yeah.
Let's say you could back squat 150 pounds, 200 pounds, because how old were you when you did cycling? You were younger, right?
As a teenager. Yeah.
Right. So let's say you could back squat that. Let's take the same body person, same mass, same everything. Like, I'm not saying, Adrian, I want you to gain 10 pounds. I'm just saying I want you to gain 100 pounds in strength. So let's just take that 150 pound, 200 pound back squat to 200 to 250 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Now your legs are that much stronger. And with running, I see what you're saying, because long distance running is all about the aerobic system, but you have to get to that aerobic system. So the faster that you can get into that aerobic system, the more efficient you will be. So like, let's say it takes you 10 to 15 minutes to get into the aerobic system, or 15 to 20 minutes as opposed to 5 to 10 minutes, because now we've trained our energy pathways enough to understand how to tap into it quickly. That's what I was taught when I did the CrossFit endurance program. Mm-hmm. Obviously they're going to have a bias because it's where they want to sell their product, but that's how I was kind of sold to it. And it could be wrong. I could be completely wrong.
But if you do, like, at the same time, so yes, I mean, getting your legs stronger is one thing.
Yeah. Same thing in a runner. A runner with stronger legs is going to do better than a runner without stronger legs.
Yeah. But if you come to CrossFit.
Yeah. And that's why I was asking, is because, like, does our stuff work? Because a client has asked, because he wants to do longer distance stuff, and he likes to look at the whole week, because then he can plan his week ahead. Mm-hmm. And so you can look on those strength days, like, okay, cool, we're doing the tempo squats. That's going to help out with my ligaments. That's going to help out with my joints. That's going to make me a little stronger. You can plan those days. But I agree with you. If I'm just doing everyday general GPP programming, but like you said, we can take anything and call it CrossFit.
I mean, if you join a CrossFit gym to do CrossFit, it's going to be hard for you to just isolate, your legs, for example.
Yeah. Right? Because we tend to do full body.
Like, as a cyclist, I didn't want my upper body to gain any weight, right? But so you come to a CrossFit class, and the next thing you know, or you come to CrossFit 3 times a week, whatever, and one day is going to be bench press, one day is going to be, I don't know, there's going to be some upper body in there.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so if in that case you eliminate the CrossFit classes that have upper body in them, mm-hmm. or, I mean, are you still doing CrossFit?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like you could benefit from getting your legs stronger by doing squats, but I mean, that's just called, strength training. Right.
You just happen to be doing it at a CrossFit gym.
I mean, yeah. And not saying that, yeah. So I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think it depends on, like, how, I would 100% agree with you for, like, high school kids or middle school kids who are getting into football, baseball, those team sports where you need, like, a good strength and conditioning base, and it's never going to penalize you until you make the choice to go into, like, one specific position where you're going to have, like, to be really good, you're going to have to specialize at one point or another, and that specialty may or may not require a good strength and conditioning base, but it also may not, right? And if you're going to be, or, like, I don't know, like a pole dancer, for example, mm-hmm. and you need to become really flexible, you may want to, I don't know, tone it down a little bit on CrossFit and just spend more time doing stretching or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. But in most cases, for people who are wondering, who have kids and who think, who are wondering whether or not they should send them to CrossFit, and whether or not that would make them better at, football, baseball, basketball, I mean, I would say yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Right. Because it's never going to hurt anyone to be, more conditioned and stronger, as long as you do things correctly. Now, if your daughter is a ballet dancer, I mean, I don't really see the point to send her to do CrossFit. I think
if your daughter is a ballet dancer and that's what they're trying to do specifically in order to go, I think as a child doing CrossFit, no matter what you do, I think is very beneficial. I don't know. And the reason why is because you're still developing. You're still developing very much. And obviously, like we have a friend that played hockey his whole life, and his upper back is like super just lordosis, just curved over like so hard. And it's like, had he done some of the CrossFit-y things like the overhead squats and those things as he was, and it's because he played hockey. He played hockey his whole life. So that's the position he's in. So if you have someone that's in ballet, if they're trying to,
their toes are all jacked.
I mean, they have their own way of getting conditioned,
yes,
and they need to,
like, let's say you have a daughter that it's in ballet and they have like a good program.
Mm-hmm.
Do not go put them in CrossFit. I agree.
Yeah, I don't think I would.
I agree. No, I'm a total. If I have a son that's playing or that's playing football, that's like, and I know that they have a really good, well-rounded strength conditioning program. Hell no, I'm not going to go throw them in a CrossFit class because they're getting everything that they need out of what they get. Now, that being said, if they don't have any of that, yeah, go join a CrossFit gym.
Even if they don't, I was listening to you, and your both points are on track. I'm not a cyclist. I never cycled, but I'm looking at it in a whole different realm, right? You can't tell me that if I put on 5 to 10 pounds of lean muscle mass, that I am not going to improve in any of my sport endeavors.
It depends, really, because
I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
Easily.
So, and I'm not.
I mean, this is me playing. This is the sports that I played.
Totally.
And that's what I've been saying. It depends on the sport,
and that's why I'm not a cyclist. So I can't. I'm looking at it from a logical standpoint.
I was talking to Dan about running. If you guys haven't met him, he's a long distance runner kind of guy. He was like, "How much do you weigh?" And at the time, I weighed 220, and he's like, "You weigh 70 more pounds than me." He's like, this run is so much harder on you than it is me because he's so much lighter. So for someone like that, and he was like, I can't remember the statistic he told me, but every 5 to 10 pounds that you adds however much more difficulty to your joints, to everything. So,
see, I'm gonna say there's a little bit of bias in that, and I don't think it's fully researched.
No, there's not. 100%, Carlos. Listen,
that one is fully
researched.
You
run a mile today. You put 10 pounds of lean muscle on, so you literally just add 10 pounds to your current weight. I guarantee you that you'll be running slower.
Yeah, there is something to that. There really is. There's science behind that.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just like the science for 25 years telling you that lifting weights will damage your bones and joints at a young age.
Yeah,
it's completely false. Right, and like I can see this from runners. Like if I put on 10 pounds of upper body muscle, then yeah, I think I'm gonna have some problems. Right. If I put on total 10 pounds of lean muscle on my body,
do you know about the different weight classes in running? Do you know about the Clydesdale class? So that's anybody that weighs over 200 pounds is considered a Clydesdale. They're in a complete different class. So like me and Dan would run in a complete different class.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with like how lean I am, has nothing to do. It's just that amount of weight.
I'm not arguing about the weight and the distribution on your joints.
That's what we're arguing about.
I'm saying taking into account that muscle mass around those joints versus just thinking 10 pounds of pressure all the time. So there's got to be a counterbalance to that argument.
In my CrossFit Endurance, one of the things we talked about was stride. So she was saying that whenever I would run, I was going up and down, right? That's how I was running instead of slowly going forward. She's like, you're going up 3 inches every stride. She goes, if you run a full marathon, that's the equivalent of running up Mount Kilimanjaro or one of those like tall ass mountains. She goes, you just ran up a mountain in this flat marathon run. That's specific. That's what it's like saying whenever you have an extra 10 pounds, no matter where it's at. It could be in your quads, your calves, your butt. It can be in all the right areas. You're still running with extra weight. It's like running with a weight vest.
So to your point, Carlos, you do need a like minimum amount of muscle to be able to like operate.
Yes.
I think that's that's given, but there's actually not a ton that's actually required for a sport like running, for example.
At a certain point, it becomes a negative or negative return. Is that the return on it? Whatever. It becomes negative at a certain point. But you're right. If you were to take, like you say, we had a 115-pound, 6-foot male, that is a tiny, tiny, tiny person. If we were to add, say, 30 pounds of muscle onto them, yeah, they're going to be a lot heavier, but they're going to be much stronger. Their joints are going to be much stronger. But let's say we add that male weighs now 145 pounds. Let's put them at 200 pounds. Now, I know that's a huge swing, but that's massive. Or let's even do 10 pounds. So we'll take that 145 to 155. That 10 pounds difference will make a difference. No matter what, it will make a difference. And I don't necessarily...
Are you talking making a negative impact or positive impact? Because if you're looking at stamina, blood flow, strength, I think if you're training properly and you have that muscle mass that's put on over time, I'm going to favor the person 10 pounds than 10 pounds lighter.
So
long-term running, and you're telling me their joints are going to be worse off.
So the body does better whenever you're lighter.
Oh,
no matter what. So let's say you get lost in the woods and you weigh like a bodybuilder. The amount of effort it takes for them just to maintain that, and I don't necessarily mean just in calories. I mean the amount of stress it puts on the body. So if you have a client that's 145 pounds and they're working just as well if you were to take them at 155 pounds, that extra 10 pounds may not give them the amount of benefit towards running that it would towards other things. That's what it is. So it's just a little bit more like it becomes a negative impact because now their body has to work that much harder to maintain that extra 10 pounds. So they have to consume more calories. Their body has to figure out a way in order to not get rid of that, because it's like me, if I stop eating one meal a day for a week, I'll lose 10 pounds fucking so fast. And everybody's like, oh, looky. It sucks because I don't want to be a beanpole. But for me to in my optimal weight, if I just ate intuitively and I just worked out, I'd probably weigh like 190. And I'm 6'2". Right now I weigh 210, 215. I fluctuate. For me to maintain that amount of weight is very hard. For me to run whenever I weigh 220 versus 215, I felt a massive difference on running, on pull-ups, on all the gymnastics things. And maybe my weights went up 5-10 pounds, but the amount of effort it took for me to just do simple stuff like wall walks, I remember those were the hardest fucking things. Every time I'm like, oh my God, because it was just 5 more pounds. Granted, that's a lot compared to someone who weighs 145 to 155.
But we're talking weight and semantics. I'm talking about lean muscle mass being added to someone's body, not weight.
No, I'm talking about lean muscle mass. I'm talking a 100% lean muscle mass.
We should.
To your point, Carlos, it also obviously depends on where you start, right? If you're like severely underweight or severely overweight, then everything is relative.
Yes.
No, definitely. I agree with you.
If you're severely underweight, then yes, adding 10 pounds of
would
lean
be
muscle
extremely
mass
beneficial.
Would be
like
beneficial.
if you're a runner that's like 2% body fat and super skinny with barely any muscle mass, I feel like you would benefit from 5 to let's just say 5 extra pounds.
Look at the
distance runners are usually
like the
super. I agree.
Like the Kenyan guys, bro. You put 10 pounds of muscle mass on them, they'll slow down tremendously.
Yeah.
Tremendously.
Yeah. But they're already that's my thing. With a high level elite runner like that, I'm agreeing. Like there's not putting weight. Like they have matched what they need to
that's
work.
kind of that's what I'm getting at, and that's what
I'm
we're
just saying,
getting
like
at.
a general person that
I
should have specified that.
day to day, health and stuff like that. I mean, would it be healthier for them to carry another 10 pounds of muscle mass, like lean muscle mass? Possibly. Yeah.
All right, so high level elite athletes that are in that field.
I wouldn't even say like elite high. I would just say someone who's like take Dan for instance. He knows his body pretty well. He's like, I do best at 150. I agree. That face you just made it, Carlos. I agree. He could do better with a little bit more weight.
Dude, if he just put 5 more pounds of his, he's a runner, shoulders and stuff.
But he's a runner, and that's where he feels the best.
Yes,
and that's where he feels the best running. Now, if we're just like, hey, general health, this is what you're going to benefit more if you were to add 5 more pounds. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's the main difference. Is are we talking general health?
Or are we talking about specific?
Or are we talking sports specific?
Yeah.
Right?
All right. Yeah.
Because since the beginning we've been saying, hey, well, at least that's what I got from it, is like, should you do CrossFit to get better at this, or or if you want to get better at this, would CrossFit help? And in some cases, yes. In some cases, no.
Yeah. I think we're all on the same.
Yeah.
It depends on the sport, and it depends on the level at which
take a 450-pound lineman.
Yeah.
500-pound lineman. Bro, you could be so much faster if you lost 100 pounds, but he wouldn't be able to push near as much weight as if he could at 450 pounds.
So that's always had that question. Like, all right, so let's say he
the
loses that 100 pounds and puts 30 pounds of muscle on and has more power output. What do you want? You want the fatter guy.
Yeah, because mass moves mass.
Well,
it's harder to push a 450 pound guy than it is a 350 pound guy.
But that mass moves mass is misguided.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Actually, ideally, you want the guy to stay the same weight but just become more powerful.
Yeah.
That's true. Because like you take Adrian, for example, what, 107, well, he's now 173 pounds. He put 3 pounds of muscle on.
Dang.
He can squat, over 400? Like,
yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Now, if you were to take his size, you'd have to be like, oh, Adrian's got to be like
Giant.
stocky as hell, right? So like
huge.
Like, so strength doesn't always correlate with mass these days. But in generalization, yes, having bigger muscles or a bigger size, you can move more shit.
Right.
But it comes in small packages and it's wrong.
Yeah. Adrian. All right.
I was talking about myself.
Oh. Okay. So we're over a lot. So I think that was a good conversation.
Great.
Appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, donate. I don't know what that means. There's no donate spots.
Donate to our favorite cause.
I just wanted to say something stupid. If you made it this far, thanks for listening.
Sign up to Patreon.
Yeah. You can Google Beyond the Metcon Patreon. You won't find anything, but it's on there.
Any donations.
We take cryptocurrency. Bitcoin. Right there.
FTX. All right, guys. Later.
Have a good one. Later.